So, the good news of Jesus Christ, you hypocrites. It's kind of a challenging text that we have today, right? We like the idea of Jesus with the kind of blow-dried hair and the slow walk and the clean robe and everything is fine. There's little lambs everywhere. It's all good, right? And then you're like, whoa, good night. Where did you get this reading from? Turns out from the Gospels also is where this reading comes from. There's a lot as we gather. There's a lot of things that get put together as we think of what's going on in our world and in our community over and against the readings that are assigned for a various Sunday. Oftentimes there's a lot of fruitful dialogue between those things, and sometimes there are Sundays where one of those pieces shoves the other piece out of the way and it gets a little bit dislocated. Today I wanted to reflect a little bit on this issue of relationships. Jesus is very clearly talking about strains in relationship because people have followed Christ. And that's a difficult thing because on some level we might say, I don't get what he's talking about. And I think there's a bit of a struggle to that because in some ways, as we might say that this is a Christian nation, at least based on the number of cross necklaces that you might see. But what does it mean to be a Christian in reality aside from the accessories, right? What does it mean to be a person of faith? What does it mean to be engaged with one another? It means to be in relationship. And sometimes, as people of faith, we are called to make decisions that are different than the society or maybe our own family around us. And that's what Jesus is referencing, that in following me, at times, there's going to be tension. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be the easiest thing. Well, what does that mean in reality? I think one of the challenges when we look at this sense of tension between people and within communities, we've resolved it in some ways by bringing Christianity in line so that it's not quite so much as a right angle to what everything else is going on. Now, there may be big things that cause tension between our lives of faith and the people around us. We can think of historical figures that made big strides in things that were dangerous and caused lots of friction. We can think of Martin Luther King Jr. We can think of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. We can think of thousands, if not millions, of people of faith today and throughout history who have struck out in ways that are following Christ, that are in tension with their close relationships and the world around them and us. But I want to talk a little bit today about what it means more on a personal level. This last week was the start of school for Palo Alto, and I think for many students throughout, or imminently, or a couple of weeks ago, but here we are. We had the blessing of bikes and backpacks, and the world has heard us. School has started. But in Palo Alto, we struggled this last week. We lost, as some of you are aware, a student who was starting at Gunn High School as a senior a week ago, 8 days ago on Saturday, who died in a way in which is sadly too familiar in Palo Alto in regards to the loss of life of our young people. What does it mean in our world, our society, in Palo Alto, in Silicon Valley, to build resilience and deepen relationships in regards to our church family and others? And we can quickly go back to these historic figures and big things. But let's talk about small things, right? Let's talk about small things. We talked about how simple it is to learn Finnish, right? That it's a challenging language. And it's not something we can do just on an annual basis for a day. We're never going to get there in that way. I talked in some ways about what it means to be like a gardener who works one day every 6 months. For our retreat this coming weekend, we're talking about what we sow in the ground and how that has to be nurtured and sustained, and you have to work at it. And earlier, Pastor Friederike just shot all kinds of holes in it because California irrigation, but yes. But you still have to pay attention and focus. Every day we make decisions that impact our ability to be in relationship and community. And your own doctor can tell you about the physical and mental health benefits of being engaged with other people in community on a regular basis. And so what are these things that challenge us? I'm not suggesting that where I'm going next is where I'm going because those were simple things for me and I have it all figured out, and all of you hypocrites, I'm just quoting Jesus, is the struggle that we have, right? Let's talk about calendars. Not calendars like in the abstract. Let's talk about your calendar. Talk about my calendar. What makes it onto your calendar? What doesn't make it onto your calendar? Seems like kind of a simple question, right? But if you're a parent or have been a parent, or all of us probably, kind of feel it, right? It's not simple. There are a lot of things that go on in this life. But when we talk about what it means to live in relationship, what it means to live in community, what it means to draw close to our baptismal promises, what it means to build resilience in ourselves and in our children and youth, what does that mean? Seems like a curious question given the news of this last week, and Emily and her arrival in the next couple of weeks. It seemed kind of cool that our new director of children, youth, and young adult ministry would be a licensed social worker. Today, that feels really, 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 really cool that she is. That seems like a powerful skill set. But is building resilience, is engaging in relationships, is being in community something that is I fly to Finland on June 12th every year, and by golly, I'm going to learn that language? Or is it the kind of thing like tuba practicing that you got to do on the daily, or you're just never going to get there? That's hard. Because it's fun. Well, no, that's not entirely fair. It's fun. Well, I'll use it that way. Fun to put things on the calendar. But you know what's not fun? Is to say, that's not going to get on the calendar. That's not fun. Kind of like maybe carrots. We know carrots are healthy. They're not always fun. Things that get kicked off the calendar. They're maybe healthy for us, though, right? Now, when we think about all of the aspects of what it means to live in community, there's those two analogies that I give. The idea of flying to Finland for one day in a year, or going to Finland for an entire year but not speaking to anybody, right? Both of those things are challenges. And all of us are gifted in different ways in regards to that type of engagement. I know for those of us who are introverted, that takes a bit more work. And sometimes there are days when you head out the door and go, well, okay, let's do this. Whereas there are extroverted ones among us who just live for this day, right? It's hard, but it's something that we have to be about. Let's say you've decided that running is good for you, and no matter what, every year you're going to take one day and run 26 miles. And that's it. It's going to not be fun it may not be fun anyway, but it's definitely not going to be fun in that scenario, right? Some things lend themselves to a once every year on June 12th. But when we think about decades into our own future and into the futures of our children, what are those things that require that regular touch point? It's hard. The other thing, in addition to calendars, are checkbooks, right? That's hard too. What do they say about our priorities? It's funny to me when Pastor Friederike was new, she was like, do you really just write money on this piece of paper and give it to people and that's a thing? I'm like, the way you're saying it sounds weird, but yes. So, yeah, that's another thing. Are these big, historic, shaping kind of actions? Maybe not, but my gut feeling is on a daily basis, we make small decisions that add up all throughout our lives, like what we choose to eat, or how we exercise, how we choose to be in relationship. Touch points. I want to share one story from early in my time here at Grace. Luther College, their choir was here and giving a concert at Grace, and it was amazing, because they're amazing. And the choir was here. This was going to be a big production. Our parking lot was a nightmare at the time, and so we had Jerry Butler, who some of you recall, who was perfect at this, was like our parking captain, and he was out there kind of directing traffic and getting everybody organized out there. And we had a couple of people that were helping him with this. One of those people was William Bond, who at the time was a high school student. And he was a couple minutes late, and he charged in and found me in the narthex and said, Pastor Matt, I'm here, sorry I'm late. What do you need me to do? And I said, I need you to go out in the parking lot and find Jerry Butler, and he'll tell you what to do. I'll stop there just for a second. We would assume that he doesn't know who Jerry Butler is, because he's a teenager, and why would he know that person? He knows his parents. He knows maybe his neighbor, maybe. He knows his teacher and his coaches. That's about it, right? That's our sense, because we have, as a society, broken how to be together. And so one of the things that was striking to me in this was he turned to me and looked and blinked, and he said, yeah, I know Jerry, and dashed out the door. Why? Why did he know Jerry Butler? Because of Grace Lutheran Church and the Confirmation Mentor Program. That's why he knew Jerry Butler. When I was new in ministry, I think it was Thrivent, but it might have been somebody else, had done a nationwide study, tens of thousands of responses. And they were wondering what created resilience and health in youth and children as they moved through their childhood. One of the top 10 things, in addition to playing an instrument was one, it was fascinating, the list of things, was having a healthy relationship with an adult who is not a family member. So where does that happen? Does that happen in their third grade classroom? It does, for the 9 months of that year. And then that is done, right? Does it happen with their coach? Absolutely it does. But in many cases, it's done after that season, or 2 or 3. Where do we engage in those kinds of relationships that are long-term, where people who knew you when you were baptized know you when you are confirmed and wish you well and pray over you when you are given a quilt on Senior Sunday? Where does that happen? And critically, your life depends on these kinds of relationships and communities. Your doctor will tell you so. You will live longer. Now, when we think of all of these things that come together, I think that it's a challenging time for us to be in relationship and community because the world says, that's a pain because, people and you have a phone, so you're good. That's not how God built us to be. So I would encourage you, as you think of this text today, to not take bad news out of it per se, but that Christ is assuming relationships among us, and that our health as individuals, as families, as communities, depends on us being together. So there, I've solved it for you. All of your calendar dilemmas will be gone. All of your checkbook dilemmas will be, no. It's a daily challenge. And I think for all of us, the hope is that it's like being in the ocean a bit at the beach. That over time, you kind of get moved down the beach in the right direction, right? That is this tide, this ceaselessness of the small decisions here and there. So I would encourage you, as you think of the students who are going to school, say a prayer in particular for those in Palo Alto, this time of loss and grief. Be near to one another. Make good decisions in regards to your calendars. Be mindful of what it means to be together in community, and recognize that we make mistakes, and sometimes there is the unstoppable force and immovable object calendar dilemma. And we gather for forgiveness in that moment too. Amen.